From politics to carriages, I sit down exclusively with founder, CEO, and president of Speak Strategic, Tyler Jones, for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play Store.
Tyler Jones, it's so good to see you again.
Hey, thanks, man. It's great to see you.
Likewise. So let's talk about it, the obvious. The primaries in South Carolina last night. Really,
primaries are over. Yeah, general election's here.
Where are you with that?
Well, I think for my party, I'm a Democrat.
Right.
For my party, it worked out as well as it possibly could.
Okay.
You know, James Smith obviously is the nominee. I think most people knew that was going to happen. But he got the opponent that we all hoped he would get. I'll be honest now. John Warren would have been a tough general election candidate against James. Very tough. That's not because, I mean, for a lot of reasons, he's an outsider. He's young. He's very good. And the military service there might have been a trade-off there with James, and that's one of James's strengths. And so that would have been a tough election for James. But Henry, I mean, he embodies what's wrong with Columbia, and I think people realize that. The culture of corruption, you know, being involved in politics for 40 years, and I think people are ready for something different and something new. So if I'm James, I'm very happy today that the primary worked out the way it did on the Republican side.
Let me take you back to 2 weeks ago, and I asked a couple of people, I asked Chip Lionels this. Okay, Henry McMaster got an endorsement from President Trump. Why didn't that take him far enough in your mind?
I think it helped him win. Look, we all know why President Trump is helping Henry McMaster. It has nothing to do with where Henry stands on the issues or Henry himself. It's political payback, pure and simple. Nothing wrong with that necessarily, but let's not make it into something it's not. I hope and pray, for James's sake, that President Trump remains involved in this campaign throughout November. I don't think that'll help Henry McMaster, but he had to pay Henry back. Henry took a chance on Trump and it paid off. And now he's getting paid back. Nothing more, nothing less.
And from a lot of people when I'm talking to, basically saying, hey, this is basically President Trump's way of trying to get ready for 2020.
Well, I've got my own thoughts about that. I don't think he'll be running in 2020, quite frankly, but you know, it doesn't hurt to be in an early primary state and be helping the incumbent governor. It doesn't hurt, but don't know how much it helps either.
Matter of fact, he said this last night, quote, "The Democrats are in turmoil, open borders, and unchecked crime. A certain way to lose elections." And you basically said these were primaries. He later went on to say, Republicans are strong for borders, no crime, a big night.
He says the same thing every time. When he's talking about a supporter, tough on crime and tough on borders, when he's talking about a Democrat he doesn't like, they're for open borders and unchecked crime, it's all just political talk. It doesn't mean anything. He doesn't have a very large vocabulary, so he says the same stuff over and over again. Doesn't mean anything. It's just him spitting out his thoughts, which most of the time are pretty incoherent.
Hey, let me take you back to Henry McMaster.
Yeah.
Obviously, the big talk around here is about 526. You said this, quote, "I can't overstate how huge of a mistake it was for Henry McMaster to lie to the people of Charleston and let 526 die tonight. Remember what a traffic jam did to Jim Hodges in 2002? This isn't just a one-day jam. This is an everyday 1 to 2 hour commute for 10 years, thanks to Henry."
I'm surprised I got all that in 280 characters, but look, a lot of people are very upset right now, for good reason, in Charleston. Henry McMaster several weeks ago came here and said, "I'm going to tell my appointees to vote for this project, and we're going to get 526. I applauded him. Democrats, Republicans, Independents, anybody who sits in traffic in Charleston applauded him. What's clear is that was deception. He intentionally misled the people of Charleston in order to get their votes, which is kind of funny. He didn't even win Charleston. It was one of the few counties he lost last night.
Right.
It was I think, a potentially fatal blow to him politically in Charleston. I don't think he was going to win Charleston anyways, but the way James Smith's path to victory in November means you run up the score in Charleston. You've got a very good candidate in Joe Cunningham running for Congress, which is going to help Democrats in Charleston as well. If Democrats run up the score in Charleston, they can not only win the congressional race, but they could win statewide and help James Smith. Henry McMaster, I can't, I've never seen a politician do something that blatant and lie to people just to get their votes. And then, it'd be one thing if the election were last night, but it was just a primary. So he's got to answer for that moving forward. He better fix it or he's got a real problem in November.
I was talking to a current Charleston County Council member who's actually a Republican, and he basically said, hey, if McMaster wins that primary, which he did last night, he needs to remove at least 2 of his appointees.
From the SIB, yeah.
Right.
He should fire them today. He should fire them today and appoint 2 members who will vote for the project. If he truly supports the project, then that's what he should do. But quite frankly, how can we believe anything he says now after telling us one thing and something completely different happened? If I were Henry McMaster or was on his staff and I saw the way that SIB meeting was going yesterday, I would have called the Chairman White, and had him come out in the hallway and say, if you vote to move this thing forward, you're fired. I will remove you tomorrow. It didn't look like that was happening because Henry was more focused on getting reelected. And at the end of the day, his promise to the people of Charleston was all it was, an empty, broken promise to get votes.
If you were to come back to Charleston right now, what would you tell him one-on-one?
If he were to come to Charleston,
Right.
fire his appointees to the SIB, schedule an emergency meeting, get this thing done, and let's move forward. It's very simple.
And you talk about moving forward. You talked about Joe Cunningham, who's obviously a Democratic nominee for 1st Congressional District. Talk to me about how this campaign is going right now in your mind.
Well, first off, let me say our hearts and prayers and best wishes are with Katie Arrington right now. I can't imagine what she and her family are going through. Upon hearing about the news, Joe, who's a client of mine, full disclosure, suspended his campaign and said, some things are more important than politics. And so he stepped aside for a few days, and so I thought that was important and showed a lot about his character. But look, I think Joe is, I thought this from the very beginning, a fantastic candidate, one of the best candidates we've ever had on the Democratic side in this area. It was going to be a really tough race against Mark Sanford. He had never lost an election. He had $1.7 million in the bank. He still got $1 million in the bank, which he didn't spend. It was going to be a tough race. But with Katie, I think there's some clear contrasts there that they'll talk about throughout the campaign, and I think it's a more winnable race now that it's an open seat. I think she spent pretty much all of her money in the primary, so we're getting a lot of national attention now. People see this as much more winnable, but right now, we're focused on making sure that Katie's getting better, and my best goes out to her and her team and her family.
Let me take you back downtown here to Charleston. Obviously, there's a new poll that's out that basically says there's overwhelming support for the carriages. And you said this quote on Twitter, like many hot-button issues in Charleston, the loudest voices are often in the minority when it comes to public opinion.
Well, it's a lot like the 526 issue where, you hear a lot of opposition to 526, but I work in politics, I do a lot of polling, and I have never seen a poll in this area that has 526, less than about 70% approval. It's very popular. But it's hard to know that sometimes when you hear the opposition because they're very loud. But just because you're loud doesn't mean you have the numbers. And so I think that's the case for 526. I think it's the case for the carriage industry too. I think overwhelmingly that poll showed that 65% of Charlestonians supported the industry, and there's no appetite for a ban, which is what opponents want to do. And so I think it's very encouraging for the carriage industry, and they're the number one tourist attraction in the city for a reason. And I think this poll showed that they've got the overwhelming support of the community.
From now until the general election, what can we expect from politics in South Carolina on both sides?
Well, South Carolina is always fun. There's never a boring day here in South Carolina when it comes to politics. Look, I think a lot of this is going to be dictated by the national environment.
Okay.
And for the past 10 years or so, it really, that's been the case. The old saying is all politics is local. That's not really the case anymore. It's very nationalized, and so Vincent Shaheen would probably have been Governor Shaheen after 2010 had it not been for a terrible national environment for Democrats. Same thing with 2014. It's very different now. There's going to be a great environment for Democrats, a toxic environment for Republicans, and if that continues, I think Democrats have a better shot in 2018 than they've had since 1998, 20 years. But Trump is unpredictable. Politics is unpredictable. So we'll have to wait and see, but it won't be boring.
Tyler M. Jones, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Man.
Thank you. Yes.